So we've covered cryptocurrency a lot on this channel, and we've covered NFTs, and we've even covered like the ideology behind that, like the libertarian ideology that somehow cryptocurrency will free the world. I really don't know how this is meant to happen, but apparently people like Jack Dorsey, Lex Fridman, even Elon Musk believe this thing that every single issue in the world can somehow be solved by cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Now, of course, like many of you, I am watching the news with like horror and watching like social media videos of horror as we watch the brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia right now. Honestly, I probably should take a break after this video because it's just really depressing to watch all of these things. But I feel like as someone who cares about politics, history, international relations, I really shouldn't look away despite how uncomfortable this stuff makes me. But at the same time, I've also been watching the absolutely insane social media reaction to this stuff. And it reminds me of the Afghanistan stuff. And remember we made that video about the memes and Afghanistan back in, was it like August or something? Well, this one's even crazier because there's so much like misinformation flying around. But today what I want to focus on specifically is the kind of like war within the crypto community about the role of NFTs, and is like invasions of sovereign countries actually a good thing for the crypto market, because apparently a lot of people think it is. And then I want to talk about just general craziness, like the way people are talking about Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, the way people seemingly have just like lost their whole minds, and the way we discuss these things. And like I said, as someone who loves history, did a degree in history and stuff, looking at this from a historical viewpoint compared to like past conflicts is really interesting, but it's also kind of depressing in a way because of course everyone has a voice now on social media, and the way we are using this stuff now just fuels like bad things happening. And there are obviously good things in social media. I just described to you, I've been watching loads of videos, first-hand accounts from the conflict. That's really helpful in like getting support for the side that is facing like this brutal invasion, but at the same time it also opens it up to loads of people just spreading so much misinformation. The only silver lining is it seems Ukraine are winning this propaganda war against Russia. So we're going to discuss all that stuff today. Now before we go any further, just like all my social media links in the description: Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, and my subreddit, all that good stuff. And also my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra, where I archive my live streams. I need to archive the streams I've been doing recently. Also, by the way, this video isn't strictly going to be talking about the politics of the conflict. I made a video last Thursday where I discuss all that stuff, so if that's what you're here for, please go watch that video instead. Now let's start with NFTs. I've made a whole video on NFTs. It's one of my more like popular videos about like Mr. Beast, David Pakman, and I've also covered like the Bored Ape Yacht Club stuff. Obviously, I think NFTs are totally ridiculous. I think NFTs are like a massive scam. I think crypto is a massive scam in general. Something posing as like this unregulated currency, which will make everyone like richer. But in reality, it's like the same rich people from the real monetary world just going into crypto and getting even more rich. And as you will see with my skepticism to a lot of these Ukraine NFT collections, the whole thing is totally ripe for scams. So on the NFT subreddit, NFT collection from East Ukraine city Luhansk occupied by Russia. Hi everyone, as you know, East Ukraine is in a difficult situation right now. Right now they're facing a huge upcoming humanitarian crisis. I don't know who he is. He asked me to create an NFT collection with some of the things that are missing in the city right now. But as I am a complete dump in this area, I wanted to ask for some advice. We already created an OS account and uploaded the items, which should be our further steps right now. If any funds are raised of that collection, all of them are going to be sent to support locals who didn't want to evacuate. I appreciate any advice in advance. So I'm just like inherently like really skeptical of all these things. Someone make an NFT of Paddington Bear that can be sold to benefit Ukraine because Zelenskyy did the Ukrainian dub for the Paddington Bear movies. Someone posting an NFT of Joe Biden saying the world will bring Russia to account. The world is tired. This is an NFT, unlockable content, not much left. Follow me on OpenSeas. And then you see like Bored Ape Yacht Club posting their Bored Apes with Ukrainian flags. Someone else saying, I feel hopeless but want not to be for the people of Ukraine. I've decided to raise money the best way I can through NFTs and our eggs. This is the first, and if it sells, I will do more and more. So obviously the famous activist band, Welcome to Ukraine DAO. Our goal is to raise funds to donate to the Ukrainian civilian organizations who help those suffering from the war. We'll be buying an NFT of a Ukrainian flag. So inherently, I guess, as NFT stuff goes, this isn't like the worst thing to use it for. Like if you can legit make money from this and donate it to a good cause, that's one thing. But then let's get into how people, as you expect with NFTs and crypto, are just going to use this to scam everyone. So an account called The Future Blends. A photographer and a 3D artist, I blend virtual with reality in my art, saying they're from Kiev, Ukraine. Someone tweeting, beware of this dude, he's pretending to be Ukrainian just to sell his NFTs, recently changed his location to Ukraine too, did one quick check on his Instagram and he literally works in India. Someone else saying, speechless, I've seen NFT creators who live in a safe country making war-themed NFTs just to score the trending topics. If you do this for personal benefit and don't donate 100% of the earnings to the victims, shame on you. And then here's an account I came across while researching this topic. This seems extremely sketchy on the surface, especially because it only has one follower and is following no one, but is still tweeting. So it's called Save Ukraine NFT, and it has a little post here saying, why donate for NFTs? Because it's the fastest and easiest ways nowadays to get in touch with well-intended people all over the world. The answer is simple. We care about this because we live with it. We are Romanians and we are in direct contact with Ukrainian refugees. We have a huge team waiting to start this project and create decent places to accommodate them. So you'd think an account like this would maybe be following some people and might be followed by, like, I don't know, founding members of this organization. Again, it could be legit. But like you've already seen, this is ripe for scams, and there is no way of knowing where this money is ending up, let alone where these people are from. So someone else doing like another NFT about Ukraine, like a sad bunny thing, and someone saying, are you really using the Ukraine crisis to shield NFTs? Even people who are doing stuff to help, apparently. Pixel Invaders stands with Ukraine. 10% of all remaining mints will go to help the Ukraine. Funds will be donated to the Ukraine Emergency Relief Fund. So like someone else saying, you're not donating 100%. You're donating 10%, so essentially you're probably making the calculation that you can make more money from doing this, and the 10% will be something like you can discount because you're making more money from buying into the trending topic. So just an article on Vice quick about this whole thing, getting some comments from people involved more deeply with the NFT community specifically before we go on to the crypto, like Bitcoin community. So crypto community rushes to Ukraine's defense armed with NFTs by Maxwell Strachan. We have the power to help, said crypto investor, entrepreneur and Bored Ape owner David Gorkstein. Web3 is positioned to help people during oppression, agreed Stani Kolachov, the founder of a decentralized financial protocol. Matt Medved, the co-founder and CEO of NFT news and analysis site, wondered how the community could come together. The co-founder of Origin Protocol asked if any NFT creators were interested in linking up, do 100% for charity drop for Ukraine relief. Some saw the conflict itself as proof of crypto's might. Crypto-focused YouTuber Matt Wallace said the Ukrainian people need to switch to cryptocurrency quickly to avoid the risk of their bank accounts being seized or frozen. So we're going to get back to this a bit later. But some, including the NFT-focused Twitch streamer Andrew Wang, were worried about the potential for Ukraine-related scams. We'd have to make sure it's not a rug and that there's full transparency. Beware of people who are launching an NFT project to help the affected in Ukraine. As with many aspects of crypto, it could be at times be difficult to discern whether people would make good on their promises of kindness or attempt at an internet-savvy form of profiteering. One NFT photo collector, for example, claimed the reason he was buying many pieces from Ukraine and then listing them on a secondary market was so that he could use the profits to support Ukrainian artists. Not all cryptocurrency activity could be focused on the people of Ukraine, of course, though those who continue to profit expressed reservations about selling digital images for hundreds of thousands of dollars while people lost their lives. Mixed feelings of joy and grief that I sold a photo for over $300,000 on the saddest day on earth, hashtag stop war. So if you're deeply uncynical, you may think this NFT thing is a good thing, but I am a very cynical person. I hate NFTs, I hate cryptocurrency. I feel like it's all just a massive scam. So by and large, I think most people involved in this stuff are probably doing it just to make a bunch of money, and at worst are not even intending to give any of the proceeds to any charity or any organization helping in the conflict. They're just doing it to make money. And again, when something is so ripe for scams like NFTs and cryptocurrency, you honestly think that a lot of people aren't doing that. Because in essence, what cryptocurrency is you're ripping off other people. That's all it is. So why would it be surprising this community take one of the worst situations in the last couple of years and then rip people off using the situation to promote themselves? So Bitcoin and cryptocurrency have a bit more of an ideological slant to them in that these people think, like I said, it will free the world. You want to get away from the centralized banking system and the regulations. But in this regard, a lot of people are very conflicted because in some ways, they're happy because they're saying, well, if Ukrainians have Bitcoin, then they're not subject to like the insane inflation of their currency that's happening right now. And if Russians have it as well, there are massive sanctions on Russia that have absolutely tanked their currency. So their money is essentially safe because in this decentralized currency, it's not subject necessarily the global financial markets, although of course this does have a knock-on effect on Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin Magazine has like 1 million followers. It's like this outlet that just constantly promotes Bitcoin. It's pretty sick, to be honest. Like, they're always praising El Salvador, despite what cryptocurrency as legal tender in that country is doing to people's money and doing to their economy. Even they seem very conflicted on like what's the right stance. I guess as libertarians, they're meant to be like above it all and not really side with each side and be for like freedom and lack of regulation, all that stuff, but let's get into it. So Elizabeth Warren saying Bitcoin undermines sanctions. So Bitcoin are saying yes with that meme. As someone who's quite conflicted on the Russian sanctions, it is interesting that they are like obviously supporting undermining the sanctions. So billionaire investor Morbius, Russians should buy Bitcoin to preserve wealth. Nothing like taking an awful situation for all involved and promoting Bitcoin with it. New National Police of Ukraine just started accepting Bitcoin donations. El Salvador president, the intrinsic value of Bitcoin now on full display to the whole world. New Coinbase will not comply with requests to ban all Russian users, saying it would punish ordinary Russian citizens. Breaking, Ukraine government and non-profits have raised $1 million in Bitcoin since the start of the Russia conflict. Here's a nice one with the eye emoji. Lines building up outside Russian ATMs. Anything to prove that apparently Bitcoin is good and not a scam, I guess, for these guys. I don't know if you guys get the vibe, but for me that's pretty sick, and it might not seem like that sinister on the surface, but essentially they're just extremely happy there's a war going on because they feel like it's proven them right, because with the Russian sanctions, well, it undermines the Russian sanctions. Normal people can get their money, and isn't that great? If you had Bitcoin, you wouldn't have to queue at the ATM where your savings are rapidly decreasing in value because of the Western sanctions. And for the Ukrainians, well, it's an easy way to get you money without the regulation, and we can give it to whoever we want without scrutiny. Again, the like gleefulness of these posts and the way they're written is just pretty disgusting, and in my mind it's just these guys trying to promote their own agenda in a really, really serious and obviously disgusting conflict. So moving on a bit further, a post in Cryptocurrency, the subreddit, Swiss banks break tradition, freeze billions in Russian accounts. Switzerland and Swiss banks are notorious for privately safeguarding trillions of dollars worth of assets to keep away from the prying eyes of financial authorities. That reminds me of The Wolf of Wall Street. Those with Swiss bank accounts are often uber-rich figures and entities looking for safe haven to store their wealth. Crypto can be a Swiss bank in your pocket. Many have been speculating across the media spectrum that Putin and Russia are planning on using crypto to evade the sanctions and measures such as this. Of course, this has been spun aside by usual suspects like Elizabeth Warren. She doesn't want Putin or Americans to have access to privacy through crypto at all. Conclusion, no centralized entity can be trusted at all. Those in power are doing everything they can to stop crypto from mass adoption. They don't want people to become free. Hold on to cryptocurrencies, our financial freedom and future depends on it. And a comment saying, are you seriously advocating that banks are bad for freezing assets linked to war crimes? The quickest way for crypto to get banned is by ignoring sanctions and the rule of law in countries it operates. So obviously maybe like not all people who love crypto are completely losing their mind. It's kind of like that post I posted about Jordan Peterson a couple weeks back where people were hating on him being a guest speaker for a Bitcoin conference. But Vice have covered this as well and covered like the dilemma between like freezing Bitcoin accounts or like sticking to the libertarian values of Bitcoin. So crypto exchanges are refusing calls to freeze Russian accounts. A Binance spokesperson said doing so would fly in the face of the reason why crypto exists. So this Vice article, again by Maxwell Strachan, crypto exchanges refuse to freeze all Russian accounts. Faced with a request by Ukrainian leadership to freeze the accounts of all people in Russia and Belarus, major crypto exchanges are steadfastly refusing, saying the tactic would unfairly harm civilians and fly in the face of the crypto community's libertarian ideology. A spokesperson for the US-based exchange Coinbase told Motherboard that the company will not comply with the request to ban all Russian users, citing economic freedom and the harm that a ban would bring to average Russians, but that is complying with the existing sanctions. At this time, we will not institute a blanket ban on all Coinbase transactions involving Russian addresses. Instead, we will continue to implement all sanctions that have been imposed, including blocking accounts and transactions that may involve sanctioned individuals or entities. Our mission is to increase economic freedom in the world. A unilateral and total ban would punish ordinary Russian citizens who are enduring historic currency destabilization as a result of their government's aggression against a democratic neighbor. We remain vigilant as this invasion evolves, and we're deeply committed to playing our part. Jesse Powell, the CEO of the US-based Kraken exchange, said that while he understood the rationale for the request, he would not freeze all Russian accounts unless legally required to do so. Powell said such a request went against Bitcoin's libertarian values and that crypto was supposed to be a weapon for peace and not war. The frustration with Ukraine's request is just the latest instance of the infamously freewheeling crypto industry reconciling its own ideology with government's priorities, while obligated to follow the law in jurisdictions where they operate. For example, crypto companies still bristled when the Canadian government ordered exchanges and other firms to block certain addresses tied to the Freedom Convoy. Honestly, for as much hatred I have for crypto, I at least understand the arguments here a bit more, in the sense that you were just trying to punish ordinary Russians for the actions of their government, and that for me is the bad part of sanctions. I think sanctions can be employed in a way that is, I guess, more moral. I do not support general sanctions against a country that's going to greatly hurt the civilians, and that's often a hard balancing act. But of course, targeting Russian oligarchs who prop up the Putin government is something I totally support. But right now, I saw that picture of the train station, ordinary Russians are suffering, the currency is completely dipping. The problem being, I guess, is that with the sanctions, what the goal is you want to create such a hostile economic situation that the civilian population rise up, at least in theory. But that rarely ever happens. It didn't happen in Iraq in the 1990s, doesn't happen in Venezuela, doesn't happen in Cuba, really. Some sanction movements, against the South African government in the 1980s, of course, did put pressure on them. And of course, this is putting pressure on the Russian government. I'm not sure how much I support, in theory, targeting individual people with crypto, but at the same time, I guess there probably is pretty easy workarounds for people who are even sanctioned by the West and by various world governments to get around the sanctions with crypto or move things into crypto. And if you keep that open for them, and the cryptocurrency post in the Reddit was saying, they suspect Putin and others might move a lot of their wealth into cryptocurrency, then of course that becomes a problem, because just like how organized criminal gangs use cryptocurrency because there's a massive lack of regulation, it's very helpful for scams. You can see a situation where regimes like Putin's use this to get around the sanctions that is meant to hurt them, and then it won't hurt them, it won't work as well, and then it just really hurts the poorest people in society. So that is it for the crypto stuff. I tried to be a bit more nuanced with this stuff, even though I absolutely hate cryptocurrency. The NFT things I find pretty stupid. Bitcoin Magazine I find really gross, but it is an interesting ethical argument, especially for libertarians as well, who claim to care about freedom so much. So now I want to move on to the total insanity of social media and how they've reacted to this conflict. So one is about President Zelenskyy, and I want to get into this. So obviously, a very brave guy, the leader of a nation engulfed in this awful conflict, has a bunch of mercenaries after him, and he's staying with his men, he's staying with the nation. That's very heroic. You wouldn't really expect that to happen in a lot of countries. Can you imagine Boris Johnson staying behind? Can you imagine so many different Western leaders staying behind? And of course, because this isn't very common in Western European countries and stuff like that, people of course like this guy, and they don't know much about him apart from he's just very, very brave, and you can understand why they like him. But the reaction to him, I think, has been really over the top and just bizarre as well. So we're going to get into social media reaction to him and how they've taken away this guy's humanity, the seriousness of him, and made him some weird liberal symbol. I don't know. He dances, he acts, he presidents, he fights. I'm a straight 41-year-old man, and I think I'm pregnant just watching him. 3,000 retweets. Breaking: every woman in your life now has at least a small crush on Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sure someone has already pointed it out, and we all have bigger fish to fry, but Zelenskyy is objectively hot, right? He's a Midwest 10. I'm just trying to imagine being as vain as Putin and having to go head to head with that hottie. I'm sure that's what people in Ukraine and Russia think about right now. Fans cast Jeremy Renner as Zelenskyy in fantasy Ukraine invasion film too soon. And I comment saying, is it obvious to everyone else that Jeremy Renner is the only logical option to play Zelenskyy, and the biopic screenwriters are almost certainly drafting already? Zelenskyy, the new biopic starring Jeremy Renner. Then more stuff. Captain Ukraine has Zelenskyy as Captain America, essentially. Zelenskyy is Captain Ukraine. Ukraine will win this war. Marvel Studios Captain Ukraine, only in theaters February 26th. Stand with Captain Ukraine. Look, if this somehow creates support for Zelenskyy more, comparing him to Captain America and a Marvel character, I guess it's a good thing generally. But I do find, like, I don't even know what this is, like the memification of this stuff, really bizarre, because here is a guy who's probably going to be absolutely traumatized for the rest of his life if he's actually makes it out of the conflict alive, which is not certain at all. He's literally watching his country be destroyed, and he's probably under insane mental pressure. He's probably going to be suffering with the mental effects of this for the rest of his life. And like comparing him to like a silly Marvel character, I don't know. I feel like it's not even respectful, and it's just stupid. And talking about like how good looking he is, don't you have other things to like talk about? Like, why don't you talk about like the actual conflict or his leadership or what you like about what he's done or like his speeches and stuff? Why are you focusing on Captain America and how good looking he is, and apparently him being cast as Jeremy Renner in a film? Do loads of like Americans just see the whole world as like an extension of the MCU or something? I'm looking forward to the history books in 100 years where like children like flicking through and seeing pictures of Captain Ukraine. Talking of bizarre, you guys would have seen this before, where AnnaLynne McCord is talking about wishing she was Vladimir Putin's mother.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain that the little boy you must have seen and believed, and the formulation of thought quickly taught that you lived in a cruel, unjust world. Is this why you now decide no one will get the best of you? Is this why you do not hide nor away shy from taking back the world? Was it because so early in life, all that strife racked your little body with fear? If I was your mother, if the world was cold, I'd have died to make you warm. I'd have died to protect you from the unjust, the violence, the terror, the uncertainty. I would have died to give you life. Oh, dear Mr. President Putin, if only I'd been your mother. Perhaps the torture of unwrit youth would not within your heart imbue ascription to such fealty against that world that you thought was so cruel. Perhaps you would hold dear human life, and on this night, instead of Mother Russia, you would call me, and I would set your mind quite free with the love that only a mother can give, and only a mother can take away. When holds she doesn't the harm at bay and leaves her boy for the promise of a man. Whatever your story, Mr. President Putin, I can't imagine how it feels in your heart, but I know if I was your mother, that would be a start towards the awareness of what a powerful being of light you could be if your mind was only free from the violence you've seen when you were just 2 or 3. I cannot believe I was born too late, in a different place, when I would have loved you so.
That is seriously like one of the weirdest things I ever watched, and I'm actually reacting to it for the first time. I hadn't watched the whole thing until right this second. Again, who sees what's going on in the world right now, sits down, writes like this story poem thing that like rhymes, clearly has like a fair bit of care going into it, from the perspective of I wish I was Putin's mother. And yes, I call him Putin. It's how you pronounce it in the UK. It's like how we say Nike instead of Nike, just get over it. She seems to think very highly of herself as a mother, that she could have made like, you know, Putin. She could have made Putin like very nice and like a good person for the rest of the world. Again, it's just like so bizarre. It reminds me of the Imagine video, but like so much worse, because I can't even understand what kind of person sits down to make this and thinks people will like it, or thinks you're even like remotely sane for thinking this is what you have to do at this current moment in time. Make some absolutely ridiculous poem about how you wish you were Vladimir Putin's mother so you could have stopped all of this from happening. Really self-centered, really just bizarre and tasteless, and I don't know what people like this are thinking. Why do so many Westerners have like main character syndrome, think the whole world revolves around them, and thinks anyone cares or wants to take you seriously if you come out with a ridiculous video like this? So just going to go through the rest of the topics I have. So another big one has been the glorification of women soldiers in Ukraine. You see that like on social media a lot. Sadly, we're also seeing some of these soldiers have pretty problematic symbols. It seems to happen a lot. There's another photo of a Ukrainian soldier with a cat, and notice the symbol on his arm. I think that's a topic for another video. I've covered that multiple times before this thing all kicked off, so you can go check out all that stuff if you want to. Another one for like the misinformation, there's a video seemingly of a Ukrainian woman teaching people how to drive Russian tanks they might find on the side of the road with fuel in it. But then it turns out the woman is actually a famous Russian who lives in Moscow, TikToker. She posted this last year, but she reposted this today, so she might be quietly saying something to Ukrainians who find these vehicles. So you have another one. Modern War is 30,000 people watching a live stream about the war, and like that is obviously really, really bizarre and speaks to like the moviefication or the gamification of conflict. I did my master's thesis on the first Gulf War, and this was the conflict that set the precedent for conflicts entertainment, because CNN and Fox did like 24/7 news coverage for like months about every little detail of the conflict, and the media coverage was tightly controlled by the Pentagon, who didn't want a repeat of the media in Vietnam. And from there it's only like got worse, and I feel like because we haven't had like a major conflict in the age of social media, in that like the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, it's become like everything can be streamed, everyone has the iPhones, everyone can do this on like TikTok or Instagram, whereas as someone like me who's been using social media since 2009, had Twitter since 2011, this type of thing just wouldn't be possible back then with other conflicts we've seen in the last decade or so. One of the more bizarre ones is a Patreon that was set up to fund the war effort, and you could buy like different types of weaponry for the Ukrainian military. So Come Back Alive is a multi-purpose non-governmental organisation consisting of a charitable foundation with the help of the army, a military training department, a veterans department, and a think tank and a niche media. And then you can see here you can just buy random things. Like Patreon did shut this down, unsurprisingly, that you can't just fund like global conflict on Patreon like you're a patron on the Kavernacle YouTube channel. Now, speaking of misinformation, I can't confirm this story. It's by The Sun. I thought it was like quite humorous, but also quite telling of where we are now with like conflict. It's about Russian soldiers using Tinder when they got to Ukraine. So hunky Russian troops called Andrei Alexander, Gregory Mikhail, and a bearded Chechen fighter nicknamed Black were among dozens whose profiles popped up, and they looked certain to get a rocket from the Red Army commanders last night after giving away their positions and posting pictures of their uniforms in flirty messages. Dasha Denelnikova's phone lit up with snaps of dozens of randy Russians when she set her location to Kharkiv on Tinder yesterday. The soldiers are believed to have come into range after the Russian president's commanders ordered a huge influx towards the city. Video producer Dasha told The Sun, "I actually live in Kiev, but changed my location settings to Kharkiv after a friend told me there were Russian troops all over Tinder, and I couldn't believe my eyes when they popped up trying to look tough and cool. One muscular guy posed trying to look cool in bed, posing with his pistol. Another was in full Russian combat gear, and others just showed off in tight stripy vests. I didn't find any of them attractive, and I automatically swiped left to reject them, but there were so many I got curious into a message exchange. It was funny but scary at the same time, knowing that they were so close." Dasha swiped messages with 31-year-old Andrei, who posed clutching his Kalashnikov in full combat gear and a helmet. This is how it went. Dasha, where are you? Are you in Kharkiv? Andrei, of course I'm not in Kharkiv, but I'm close, 80 km. Do you have any plans to visit us? I would come with pleasure, but Russian guys have not been welcome in Ukraine since 2014. Andrei, I was born in Belgorod and was an engineer before 2014 and visited Kharkiv quite a lot and loved it there so much I wanted to buy a flat. I love to travel to Asia, particularly Thailand, but now it's a difficult time. I wanted to travel to Europe, but getting a visa is difficult because no one likes Russians right now. When Dasha asked outright whether Andrei was a Russian soldier, he replied with a cheeky gift of a Hollywood star Jim Carrey saying, "Oops." In the space of 1 hour, Dasha's Tinder troll unearthed a steady stream of Russian admirers, all appearing to be among Putin's force amassing to the north. Of course, the thing is, these could all be fake and just people like joking. There are so many fake Tinder profiles and people just stealing images. Like, I'm sure these guys could just like find pictures on the internet, on Russian social media, or maybe pictures of their friends they've taken. So I guess part of this video is just to like document that this stuff even happened. Like maybe looking back in this video like 5 years time, someone who watches this, or even myself who watches this, won't even believe like how people reacted to this stuff. Like, of course, we can all say like, remember then this happened, remember then that happened. I'm sure we'll forget things like, you know, wanting to be Vladimir Putin's mother. I'm sure we'll forget things like the Tinder stuff or the debates around crypto and NFTs. But it just increasingly shows how the world's reaction to very, very serious issues gets so lost in the social media-ness of it all, and it just gets really, really crazy. Like simping for Zelenskyy, saying how hot he is, obviously the Vladimir Putin's mother, talking about like the Ukrainian female soldier and everything. It's just something that you wouldn't see a couple of years ago, even with the Crimea stuff, because social media just wasn't like how it is today back in 2014. Obviously, like, none of this conflict is funny at all, and I've recommended pages on Twitter, you can go see my tweets, of pages to follow that are documenting the conflict in extreme detail, like stuff you will never see on the mainstream news. I recommend people go watch it and follow these pages, just because I feel like everyone needs to watch what's happening for multiple reasons. Obviously, to see how awful Russia are acting. Another thing just to keep in mind for me personally, in terms of like, just to see what war is like and what happens with war, and to stop being so like blasé with talking about like civil war in the United States over like really ridiculous things, because the reality of these types of conflicts is nothing like the glorification in your mind that you see in movies. And that's why I guess I have such a problem with people memeing this stuff and making it seem like a movie or a video game, because on the ground, these people don't find it funny. Like, on the ground, people aren't talking about like, I wish I was Vladimir Putin's mother. They're not like fighting over like the ethics of crypto or scamming people with NFTs. It's a very, very real situation. And like anyone, like I'm sure a couple of you who are even watching this might have grown up in a conflict zone, you will think like this is just so bizarre and surreal, because this type of reaction just never existed for things in the past. Sure, the glorification, like I said, with the first Gulf War, the movification of conflict has gone on for a long, long time. But the social media elements of conflict we've only been seeing with Afghanistan and now Ukraine. But like I said at the start, this video isn't really to talk about the conflict in general. If you want my detailed views on the conflict, go look at my Twitter. Go watch the video from last week where I literally just spent 30 minutes talking about all that stuff. I need to put the live streams on my second channel, because I've done 2 streams on this stuff, like an hour long each, giving my views about everything to do with this. So hopefully that will all go up soon. But anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Let me know about the craziest thing you've seen on social media. I did ask on Twitter, but of course, I guess not everyone could message me on Twitter. If you want to follow me on social media, at the Kavernacle on Twitter and Instagram, check out my Patreon, check out my subreddit for our community. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.